There's a quiet tension many people carry now. It doesn't arrive suddenly. It settles in. You notice it when you're doing ordinary things, buying groceries, paying a bill, putting fuel in your car, and even replacing something small. Nothing dramatic happens. And yet, something feels heavier than it used to. You earn, you plan, you try to be responsible, but still, everything feels more expensive than it should, not only in money, but in attention. It's not always the price itself that feels uncomfortable. It's the moment before the purchase. That pause. The quiet calculation you didn't used to make. The brief question, do I really need this right now? Sometimes the answer is yes. Sometimes it's no. But the question appears either way. That's new. There was a time when money stayed in the background. It moved quietly through daily life. Now it steps forward. It asks to be noticed. And that constant noticing is tiring. You might recognize it in small moments. Standing in a store, holding something familiar, and realizing it costs more than you remember, even though it hasn't changed. Or scrolling online, closing the app without buying anything, not because you can't afford it, but because you don't want the weight of another decision. Maybe you keep things longer now. Use items past the point you once would have replaced them. Delay upgrades that used to feel automatic. None of this feels dramatic enough to explain to anyone else. It's not a story you tell. It's a quiet adjustment you live with. Most people don't announce how they adapt. They don't call it minimalism. They don't frame it as a lifestyle choice. They simply make changes. They choose the smaller version. They cook more often. They say maybe later instead of now. Not because they want less, but because less feels easier to carry. These adjustments happen slowly, almost invisibly. Sometimes even the person making them doesn't fully notice until life already looks different. There's also a conversation that happens quietly inside. It sounds like this. I could buy it, but do I want to think about it afterward? Is it worth the attention it'll take from me? It's not always about affordability. It's about mental space. Money doesn't just leave your account. It follows you into your thoughts. When every purchase needs justification, even comfort begins to feel conditional. And that's where the exhaustion builds. Not from spending, but from constantly measuring. Periods like this have appeared before, not always in obvious ways. They tend to reshape people quietly. Comfort becomes something reconsidered. Success becomes less visible. Security starts to mean stability, not expansion. People don't suddenly change who they are. They refine. They choose differently, not because they're failing, but because the environment has shifted. Adaptation doesn't announce itself. It settles in quietly. Over time, something else begins to happen. The definition of enough changes. It stops being about accumulation and starts being about ease. A routine that feels manageable. A life that doesn't demand constant explanation. Choices that don't require justification. Wealth, in this sense, becomes quieter, less visible, more personal. Not something to prove, but something to protect. If everything feels more expensive than it should, you're not imagining it, and you're not alone. Many people are learning how to live with a little less noise, a little less urgency, a little less weight. Not because they've given up, but because they're adjusting, quietly. Sometimes wealth isn't about having more. It's about learning how to carry less.